Good morning, Oklahoma. Welcome to the Middle Ground. I'm your host, Michael Carnuccio. The NFL has been rocked by not one, but two controversies in the past 2 months, with a few more coming. In September, the NFL indefinitely suspended Ray Rice after reports and video surfaced of him knocking out his then-fiancée in a casino elevator. Then Adrian Peterson is indicted on child abuse charges. Just this week, the judge in the Peterson case refused to recuse himself in the felony child abuse case, rejecting prosecutors' request to step aside because of what they are calling biased disagreements. The judge, by the way, has reportedly called the lead attorney on both sides of the case media whores. Well, here to discuss all of this is Barry Tramel from the Oklahoman. Barry, thank you so much for being here. Let's start off with Adrian Peterson and talk about this, because right now he's not playing, and I think he's out on $15,000 bail awaiting a December 1st trial. But he still is getting paid the $11.75 million pending the outcome of that trial. If he's found not guilty, do you expect him to suit back up this season?
I don't. I think Adrian Peterson, he was a hero in Minneapolis and the whole state of Minnesota and lots of other places, including here. But his status took a severe hit with this case. On the heels of the Ray Rice situation, this rang very stinging with the American public. To hear about a 4-year-old boy getting whipped with a switch to the point of injury a week later that a doctor could still recognize. So I think the Vikings realize and the NFL realizes this is a PR disaster. I don't see Adrian on the field this season.
So to that point, you mentioned the NFL. Let's say Peterson's found not guilty in a court of law, but do you expect the NFL, though, to still follow through with some kind of penalty, still maybe suspend him for a year or so?
Well, I don't know about the length of the suspension. I do think he faces disciplinary action, but what I think we're seeing is some market forces where the NFL might not have to levy a punishment. It's going to be a difficult thing for a franchise to take a chance on an Adrian Peterson or Ray Rice. I think the backlash from the public would be mighty, and we've seen the PR storm that's come about in the recent months. So I think Peterson and Ray Rice both are going to have difficulty getting employment.
I want to jump to the Ray Rice story. And by the way, folks, you can find more information, some of the news stories about both Peterson's case and Rice's case on our Facebook page right now. But let's go to Ray Rice and talk about how the NFL has handled that situation. They really took, and Roger Goodell, especially the NFL commissioner, took some heat over that. Do you agree with the way they handled that process, and do you think others do as well? No,
and the NFL comes out looking very bad, because when this story broke last spring, and then the NFL with no video, and then the NFL comes down with a 2-game suspension. Most people said, well, this guy hit his wife, and we didn't see the hit, but the slug, but we see him dragging his wife out of an elevator. 2-game suspension. Most people said that's not near enough. And then when the video comes out, the NFL, of course, comes out looking very, very poor. Responds with the indefinite suspension, but the NFL comes out looking very bad in this. It looks like a league that really doesn't get it, and just is having to respond to the public opinion.
And what about the Players Association? Haven't they appealed the suspension? And maybe that's a standard procedure, but do the same rules apply there? And do you think there'll be any fallout from that?
Well, the problem in the NFL is they have a very weak union compared to what we see in the NBA and Major League Baseball, and the owners can generally, push the union aside any way it wants. So I think they're just sticking up for their players. But like I said, I don't think these guys are going to need NFL suspensions to keep them away. I think the franchises themselves are going to be very leery at trying to sign either one of these guys to a contract.
Well, I want to bring this a little closer to home and talk about both of the major flagship universities here that have experienced trouble, also with some abuse cases, and they've been handling them. But there's some folks that say, look, these are personal lives for athletes, and either the colleges or the professional teams don't need to be concerned with that. They just need to be concerned with the business and who's on the field. But that seems to conflict. What do you think when you're hearing that?
Well, I mean, I think it's I think the personal lives and the personal deportment of these guys is an issue, because even on the college level, this is a business, and it's a marketing issue, and they're trying to get in people's pockets. They want your money for tickets, for memorabilia, for all kinds of things. And the public cares about this thing. They care how these athletes, if they cheer for a guy making a touchdown, they don't want to hear later that he's been doing things that you find reprehensible. So I think that's not going to be an issue. They have to worry about it. Surely on the college level, I think we can agree that 19, 20, 21-year-old guys need guidance and mentorship and be sort of led in the right direction. So you can't just turn them loose. The NFL has largely done that. The NFL is coming to the point where they can't do it either. So I think these guys are going to be held accountable.
And I think it was just this past week, correct, that there was an OU player, the cornerback Sanchez, that had written something to support one of his teammates, Frank Shannon. And, of course, that conflicted with the university policy, and Coach Stoops stood up and backed the university and said he disagreed. Are we starting to see some locker room trouble that colleges need to deal with over these issues?
I don't think it's necessarily locker room trouble. I do think that some of the younger players, some of the college students don't really understand the ramifications. When you talk about a guy who's been suspended from school for alleged sexual assault, that's not a football issue. That's an issue of the university leadership saying, you know what, our patrons are the citizens of Oklahoma. We got to know that the teacher in Elk City and the insurance agent in Bartlesville and the police chief in McAllister, they can send their daughters to Norman and not have to worry about their safety. And when you don't respond to certain situations, that is called into question. And that's why University of Oklahoma and all kinds of other schools respond in such a way. So I think that's not really something a 19-year-old cornerback thinks about or worries about. But that's what Bob Stoops has to worry about, and David Bourne and Joe Castiglione.
You've been writing quite a bit on this. And, folks, if you go to our Facebook page, you can see a link to a blog that you recently had where you had a lot of emails that came in from folks and their opinion, and then you responded to them. I thought personally that you handled a lot of those critiques great. Let me ask you about a few of them here as we close out. One viewer said, I think it's unfair to tag Adrian Peterson as a child abuser, yet another one says Peterson needs to apologize to his children, doing all that he can to make up the relationship. And what do you think, and what are you saying to folks that are giving you this feedback?
Well, I think this was a classic example of how it just depends on your personal experience, how old you are, where the part of the country you come from. I mean, I would assume a lot of 25-year-olds don't even know what we mean when we say the word switch.
Good point.
And parts of the country. But down in the South, if you're 50 years old and we're in the South, you probably got hit with a switch when you were a kid. So it's just whatever your personal experience is. But the truth of the matter is, we've come to the point where we really don't do that much anymore, and we've reached a little bit more enlightenment that just physical intimidation of your own children is not such a great thing. And most people are coming around to that. It takes time on any issue like that. So I think it's just, what people have experienced in their lives.
Very fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time. And we would like to hear from you all as well. Send us your thoughts on our Facebook page. Again, that's facebook.com/MiddleGroundTV. Tell us what you think about these cases. Now, still ahead, 1 in 4 women experience physical violence from an intimate partner in their lifetime. Well, up next, we're going to discuss the reality of that violence in our state. Stay tuned.